Well, good afternoon and welcome to Voices of Faith Transforming the Community. The mission of the Saginaw African American Pastors, known as SAP in the greater Saginaw County region, is that we are a Christian faith group dedicated to addressing issues on every level. Basically, what we do is we engage, we advocate, and we collaborate. Our goal is to empower Saginaw, Midland, and Bay City with tools and information that's going to help you excel in life. We want all of you to have a better quality of life, and we bring you various subjects and topics that we think can help you, educate you, information you can pass on to others, and so forth. My name is Dr. Craig Tatum. I serve as pastor for New Life Baptist Ministries, and I serve as president for Saginaw African American Pastors. I'm going to be your host on the day. And today, I say it every week, but it's always correct. Today, I am happy to introduce our guest today, who is a trendsetter in the history of Saginaw, Michigan. Yes, Saginaw, Michigan. In the person of Mr. Kevin Jones, he is the founder of a Museum of Black Experiences. So, Mr. Jones, I want to welcome you. Say we're certainly excited to have you with us on the day. Tell me, well, first of all, welcome. And then secondly, tell me what inspired you to start a museum of Black experiences, and how did you envision it when you first began?
Yeah, so thank you so much for the warm welcome. It's exciting to be here and to be a part of this conversation. So as a kid, I was always a fan of those movies that, where people were looking for treasure.
Okay.
They were looking for something that was hidden and there was some kind of history behind it. All those sorts of things intrigued me.
Okay.
Coupled with that, my grandmother who lived with us in Carlton, Michigan, where we grew up in this area. She was from the South, as was my dad, and she brought a lot of items with her from the South, including some very racist items in terms of, kitchen figurines, pepper shakers, and she often had those in the house and talked about those items.
Excellent.
In terms of what they meant for us as Black people, in terms of our interpretation. And so, as many years went by, decades went by, I began collecting those items.
Okay.
For 25 years, and had a desire, just, I wanted to share, kind of the same way that my grandmother shared with us, what some of these things meant in terms of our contemporary history,
right,
as well as being able to connect it to the past. And so, with a MUSB, or a Museum of Black Experiences, my hope and goal is to bring to Saginaw, a museum quality experience where people can explore Black histories, Black art, Black stories, but also have an opportunity to experience it in the context of Saginaw.
There you go.
And so that's something that's very exciting for me. I think that, it's a shame for anyone to have to go, more than 15 miles to go to an institution to learn about Black history. And so, given our region, I think this is something that we could use and be able to attract people to the area. And so, that's how we've have started.
Okay.
And I'll share more a little later, probably, about the building we have and what's happening there, and at least how we're using the building. And
gotcha.
Now, putting quotes around the building, because I'll share more about that.
And you've already peeped the card already, because obviously I want people to know that there again, you've already kind of given us a snippet of where you grew up, but I need you to share a little bit about your background, and what you've already teased us a little bit about, what role did growing up in Saginaw play in shaping your passion for preserving Black history and culture. And again, I think people need to understand that, yes, we do have, I think we have the Saginaw Museum.
Yeah, we have the Saginaw Art Museum.
Okay.
We have the Castle Museum, which collects our local history and shows and exhibits. We have our Children's Museum.
Right.
We have some great institutions here.
Great.
But certainly a MUSB, and I'll talk more about myself, but it's not here to replace any of those institutions.
Right.
I see us as being able to work in collaboration and partnership, and we're all doing something slightly different.
Correct.
Well, maybe more degrees than slightly, but we're doing some things very different. But yes, I grew up for most of my years on Baylor Court in Carlton, Michigan. We were fortunate that my grandmother lived with us in the house with my mother, my father, my twin brother, my older sister, my older brother.
Okay, got a twin. Okay.
Yeah, I got an identical twin brother. Shout out to Kenneth Jones.
All right.
Kenny. He lets me call him Kenny.
All right.
But yeah, so, in my dad came to Saginaw in '68 from
Wow.
Philadelphia, Mississippi.
Okay.
You know, and my uncle Roosevelt Jones had been in the area. You know, so he kind of helped bring a lot of the family to this area.
Excellent.
My dad and mom met in Gary, Indiana. My mom, she's from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, but they eventually moved to Gary. My dad met her there, and you know they made a home in Carlton. Eventually, my grandmother, after my granddad died, moved here. But you know, we were involved because my dad worked at General Motors, so
Right.
you know anything GM related.
Okay.
And so just being able to have that diverse experience, that was something that I think was. When I talk about my experience growing up, you know, my dad being involved with the union, even though there was sometimes challenges, but often what I remember were the strikes and how families came together, and you know, despite differences, they found commonalities. And so I always associate that with my experience in Saginaw. And also likewise, you know, just you know, my family, we've often we attended churches throughout, you know, this area. You know, my dad is very active, or has been active with, you know, as an usher at True Vine.
Gotcha.
And, you know, we grew up at Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church. And so that was kind of where I tell people my also experience with art came from, you know, having to be a part of those public speaking or, you know, all those vacation Bible studies.
I got you.
But also what was with that was history. Often we found there were ways, whether I was religious history or our local history, you know, when I was celebrating the church anniversary or the 50th usher board.
I'm with you. Look, you know, I'm a native of, you know, I was born, well, I won't say I was born in Shiloh, but I grew up at 295 Grant Street. Yes. I grew up there. So I clearly understand the significance of having that in your life, and really pointing to there again, because talking about the history of the Bible, but the history of the church, the history of Carlton, et cetera, et cetera. So clearly, you know, all of that stuff has had an impact on your life. And I want to underscore for everyone that there again, you know, the purpose of the museum is to enlighten. It is to give you a different look at life through the lenses of people that may not be your color, the experiences may not be the same, etc. So when you think about the museum itself, how would you define the mission of the museum, and why do you think it's important in this community at this time for the city of Saginaw?
Yeah, you know, I'll summarize the mission, but you know, really our main effort is to produce museum quality exhibits about Black culture and Black experiences. And that's a very general mission, but it's very powerful.
Gotcha.
And what I mean by that is, you know, if you come to the location that the museum, you know, that the nonprofit is using, which is my home, my personal home that I purchased, you'll see just an array of different items.
Gotcha.
Particularly related to, you know, there's one room you'll come into and there's a lot of, well, even before I describe that room, you just come into the space and you see mostly probably a 99% Black people, Black representation, Black cultural forms. And it's very rare in Saginaw to go into a space like that.
Gotcha.
And so I think for one thing, just to be able to provide museum quality exhibits that feature people that may not go to some of the other institutions for various different reasons.
Right.
And so I think that, you know, we hope that mission, we know that mission will grow in terms of as we begin to build and get our feet and get more established as more of an institution here in Saginaw. But I think for right now, as we, you know, build this movement and inspire a movement for a Black museum here in Saginaw, that's even bigger than what we have now, you know, we'll have I think a greater opportunity to, you know, expand that mission, to make sure that we're doing other things. You know, we have hopes to, you know, make sure that people are experiencing, you know, other artists, so not just artists in Saginaw, but artists from around the country, artists from around the world. You know, there's a lot of Black memorabilia, so those Black racist items, you know, the salt and pepper shakers, those items that have, you know, the big lips and the bulging eyes, things were made to kind of make fun of Black people.
Right, I got you.
A whole room that has those items, and the curation of those items are, you know, it's curated in a way that people can really get to explore and get close to those items, but also begin to ask questions about why was this the way it is?
Right.
How does this continue now in our contemporary days? And that's what we hope to do with the exhibits that we have, is to raise that consciousness or to begin to ask some of those questions.
Have the conversation.
Have the conversation.
There you go. Now, before I go any further, I want to make sure you throw out there again the location and hours so that people who are listening right now will at least know your hours, whether it's by appointment. They'll know the address so that they can write that down. Why don't you just share that with us quickly?
Yes. So I was blessed to be able to purchase a home at 1243 South Jefferson
Okay.
Avenue. So that's right there, near St. Mary's, right there at, on Jefferson between Atwater and Remington.
Gotcha.
And right now we're operating as a private museum. So we're asking people to make appointments.
Gotcha.
We quite often have different events and open it up to the public. For this past year, we've just allowed the public to just come in to use the space for free, but also to experience the. I have a collection of more than 5,000 or more than 6,000 pieces. Probably,
wow.
4,000
Wait, I need you to say that again so they know you the real deal. Say it again.
There's a collection. I've been collecting for more than 25 years. Again.
Wow. Okay.
So part of it's my family's collection that they've had over the years, but also other items that I've acquired, through my other business, Black Teaking, or I spend a lot of time in antique shops, and so that's the name of the business.
Okay.
But I acquired probably, I don't have the exact count, but there's over 6,000 pieces.
Wow.
4,000 that are housed at 1243 South Jefferson Avenue.
Wow.
But we only have a small amount on display.
Okay.
And so that's why we get the opportunities to change those out. So, please go to our Facebook page, my Facebook page, Kevin Jones, or a Museum of Black Experiences on Facebook, where we post, where we do different events. The goal is to make this to be open more open, to be more open, so that people can enjoy and experience it. But we're all volunteers. My goal initially when I purchased the property was to make sure that the museum could use it full time. But
it's a process.
It's a process,
right?
I've also, why I came back to Saginaw 4 years ago is my dad had a stroke.
Gotcha.
And so that's one of my main priorities. I also work full time.
Gotcha.
So, we're trying to make it all happen. We're, possibly looking at other spaces but for right now, the museum is allowed to use that private residence, the first floor.
Okay.
Where there's 4 different rooms that are curated with both the Black Teaking collection that I allowed the museum to use, but also we have the contemporary artwork from local Saginaw artists. Right now, we have a great display by Naisha Clark Young, and some of the photography and 3D pieces that she's done, and we're working on the opening for her show soon. So
excellent. So you've already, and there again, you talk about some of. So what are some of the other more powerful exhibits that you've curated, and how have they, when people see them, what's kind of been their impression of them?
Yeah, I think there are a few things that people come in and see. One that I'll talk about first, and people have heard me talk about this in some aspects. Through TikTok, there was a family that said, "Hey, we see what you're doing in terms of collecting these racist items and encouraging people to preserve them. Our family has maintained a bill of sale for an enslaved African that their great relative, purchased. They purchased a black, as it said in the bill of sale, a Negro slave girl around the age of 12 years old. And so I often point that out to people because for me, we don't know the name of the young girl. We don't know her identity. And I want people to, actually see that within the contemporary history that there was a time when people were sold.
Wow.
And put into forced labor. I think people also, they look at the blackface and the minstrel show exhibit that we have set up. And part of the story there is, these items that you're looking at weren't necessarily just in the South. In fact, the photographs that you see came from a minstrel show right outside Bay City, Michigan.
Wow.
That, going to the antique shops, someone said, "Hey, we have this." And so there's those sort of items that, I think that really stand out for people. And then, of course, people are always amazed by the contemporary art. We have great artists in Saginaw. And so, I think people are amazed to see the great works because, unfortunately, our local artists don't always have places to display their works.
And that does say something to us, Saginaw, Bay City, and Midland. There are great people right here among us that, with the right opportunity, you can shine. And there again, it gives hope and inspiration. So, since you said that, how do you decide which items or stories to include in the museum, especially when, we start talking about a museum with a Black experience? How do you do that and know that you had some balance there?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the internal challenges for independent curators of any kind of work.
Okay.
How do you make sure that you're putting out the right items to tell the right story?
Gotcha.
And so, I've been trying to make sure I'm spending time in community to understand like what are some of the stories that people are interested in hearing.
Gotcha.
And then do I have items that I can actually pair with, that contemporary story? Now, because I have such a large collection, I may walk through the place and say, you know what? Let me change this piece out and put another piece in.
I
Or
got
may
you.
get something else and change it out. And so I often encourage people like come back because I'm often putting new pieces in and moving things around. And so that's part of what I love about being a curator, being able to kind of set these exhibits. My grandmother was someone that we didn't have a lot of money growing up. And
right.
So we often 4 times a year, I think, we should change the furniture around just because put up new put up other curtains, but just to be able to tell that story to keep things fresh. And so, I kind of use that same principle as I think about the collection. And,
excellent.
And then, of course, we tie it to different, if there are events of Juneteenth, or Kwanzaa, certain things that we try to make sure that we're, operating in parallel.
So, and we got a couple minutes just before we go to break, but how does a museum aim, and I really want parents to hear this, how does a museum aim to engage young people and future generations in learning about Black history and culture?
Yeah, so we make sure that we're inviting students and teachers as well as parents and their children to come in together to explore the experience. And myself as well as a few other volunteers, we're often we're there, we're available to kind of talk through what's displayed, but to do it in a way that folks can come up with the answers themselves.
Gotcha.
We try to raise some questions, but we want people to come up with the answers themselves. What I'm excited about is that we also have exhibits at different levels. And what I mean by that is if you're a young person and you're 4'2", 5 foot, you don't have to strain your eyes and look at exhibits. We've made sure that we've tried to make things accessible to people. And so that young people, little kids can kind of look and see. We believe that we're encouraging people and in some ways, I won't say teaching people how to enjoy museums, but how to, really be a part of that experience and not necessarily feel like, oh, I'm nervous about this. Now, we want people to come in. We want them to enjoy it. We want them to see it at eye level. If the young person, the little kid wants to touch something, we've actually allowed people to touch items.
Okay.
And those items that can't be touched, we make sure we lock those away or we store those and we put them in a particular way that they can't.
Gotcha.
But we really want young people to, especially our parents, to kind of learn together. And sometimes that learning is not me just talking to you, but you might need to pick up this, this jolly bank, this jolly N-word bank, and see how heavy it is. And so we can talk about the 1920s and the world that was coming and how we stopped using cast iron because, and so that's why some of these racist items kind of went away because the war came,
Gotcha.
So we can engage in different types of stories and make it fun for people.
Now, I didn't ask this earlier, but I need to. So you've been open how long now?
So, we have officially I would say, I think saying kind of because it's by appointment only, but,
Gotcha.
Since last year, but around July of last year,
okay,
it was clear that we would not be able to open in the way I thought because of some of the zoning issues and other construction. And, frankly, I just don't have a lot of money. so we slowed down. We had to slow down. And even though we have a nonprofit structure, I privately own the building. So we only use the nonprofit structure for the educational purposes.
Gotcha.
And we only fundraise for educational purposes. But, making sure the building is fine and it's a beautiful building. So since last year, September of last year, more people have been coming. We've had over 700 people come through the space.
Wow.
For different events. We've built in a temporary stage that we can remove.
Okay.
So we preserved this home that was built in 1857. So we're not making major damages.
Excellent.
We're keeping the preservation of this home, which is an honor to have that custodianship over it.
Excellent. And well, hey, we're gonna take a break right quick because we got to come back. I have so many questions to ask. I know we're gonna run out of time, but stay tuned. You need to hear this information from Mr. Kevin Jones, founder of a Museum of Black Experiences. It's a great piece. You need to hear the rest of it. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, so we good? You good?
Good.
Okay. All right. Good deal.
I was short my answers.
No, you're good. No, you're spot on. We're good. All right. Hey, we are back again. Again, I want to remind you, Saginaw Bay City and Midland, like and share, pass it on to others. We're talking with Mr. Kevin Jones, founder of a Museum of Black Experiences. And I think the key thing that I want to encourage during this broadcast is the game plan is to be willing to learn and explore. Now, here's the reality. Sometimes people hear something like a Museum of Black Experiences. I don't want to hear, I don't want to see that, it's going to make me angry, blah, blah, blah. Part of the learning world is we've got to be exposed to things that sometimes they do make us uncomfortable, but we also learn in the process. And so I'll ask you, have you ever had to navigate criticism or pushback regarding an exhibit since you've been open? And if so, how did you address that?
Yeah, and you asked this question some earlier, and so I think this is going to tie in perfectly. Yeah, there's pushback.
Okay.
I collect some of the most racist items. I collect items that were used to make fun of Black people, used to demean us, used to, not put us in a good light, and so there have been people that have come in and say, I understand what you're doing. Black people come in and say, I understand what you're doing, but I don't like looking at these items. Now, and this is some learning for me over the years of collecting, because I wanted to explore, like, what did that mean?
Right.
Because I grew up in a household where my grandmother played Little Black Sambo on the record player for me and my twin brother. And and told us about how she got this, why those white people were crazy, and they weren't doing the right thing, but how we still needed to understand what these stories meant,
right,
and how we can still overcome all these things. And so what I recognize in talking to more people about their discomfort, people just have different experiences as it relates to these items.
Correct.
I'm not a Black woman. So for the ancient mama caricature, I can try to have a sensitivity to why a Black woman say, I don't want to see this depiction, or for this to be celebrated, because I'm more than just this.
Right.
I totally understand and I get.
Correct.
And so trying to have that sensitivity of how do I still display this in a particular way, but not demean the stories of other people. And so I talk about a Museum of Black Experiences, and you asked earlier, how do I make sure I'm adding the right pieces? I think it's important to stay in community to have those conversations. I think it's important to have a group of volunteers or a curation team to say, okay, what does this mean to have these sorts of items? And so, my partner in creativity, Naisha Clark Young, we often go back and forth in conversations. She is an artist. She's an artist. I'm not an artist.
I got you.
I'm a historian. I love history. I like pretty things. I like nice things. I believe I can organize some stuff, and curate. I believe I'm pretty good at it. I think, yeah. But but we go back and forth even in terms of balancing, like how much of this do we display this artistically versus how much history do we put on the walls? And so one of my complaints is like, there's not enough words on the walls. There's not enough words on the walls. And I don't want to necessarily direct people into coming to a specific understanding of what this exhibit might mean, but I do want to provide enough context so that folks aren't necessarily just trying to guess what this might mean in the context of other things.
And I think people have to understand that you are an evolving museum, and that number one, you've been open a little bit less than a year. It's not like the National Museum of African American History that is, filled with everything. And it goes back, having had that experience, there again, it is very educational. It does again help you go back and question and ask questions. And I found that we were hungry to find out more information about how we evolved over time. And I think what I hear you saying is you're doing the same thing. It's just on a smaller scale.
I believe so. I was fortunate to live in DC and watch the construction of, that beautiful, what I'll call a monument to our history and to the Smithsonian system, was also something that inspired me, because in DC, you don't have to pay to go into museums, which I love. And so, so there are many things I'm trying to bring from those experiences and enjoying those museums here. But the other thing I'll say, even beyond going to DC, I think about the Charles H. Wright Museum. And, what encourages me is that Charles H. Wright started his museum in his living room.
Wow.
And so my reminder is, if Charles H. Wright could do this.
Mm-hmm.
There's a template that I could do. I mean, that I can also follow. But also, I know there's a pathway for this to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not a coincidence that the name of the museum is a must be, or a museum of Black experience.
I got you.
And when we talk about it, I have to encourage people, you know, and this is, I haven't done this in a while, and maybe I've been a little discouraged because things have taken a little, the delay is not a denial, but things have taken a little
Absolutely.
longer. But when we say a must be, I often encourage people to say it must be.
I got you.
You know, and because I do believe that this museum is destined for Saginaw and destined to be in this region. And so a must be is a reminder, and it's our war call and our war cry that it must be. Whether or not it's our history, whether or not it's our telling of stories, whether or not it's our engagement and fellowship with one another. That museum will happen just like those other museums happen.
And I think the key thing for Saginaw Bay City and Midland to understand is, you know, we've always been a very diverse group of individuals interested in learning, always being top notch in everything that we do. And that does mean branching out and doing things differently. You know, when you look at Saginaw Bay City and Midland, it has evolved over time. The complexity of it, the composition of it has changed over time, and yet we're still strong. Like every community, every state, we have issues and challenges, but nonetheless, you know, Saginaw is going through a transition now as a city, and this is a great time to be introduced to new things. And I think Saginaw, I want to challenge you to not only go by, take the tour, hear the information, but allow it to help you grow as an individual as well. Now, there's another side, which we will call the organizational side of what you do. So you've been open about a year and then some. So how has the community responded to the museum so far? You know, what about support from local organizations or businesses? How does that all factor in?
Yeah, so you know, we received a lot of support and encouragement from the residents in our area, and also say beyond. But I'll start with our area. You know, folks have. It's not unusual for me to come to my house and find a box of items that people say, "Oh, I know you collect Black dowels," or "I saw this particular item and I think it'll be good in your museum."
Excellent.
You know, sometimes people don't leave their names on the notes, so I can't thank them. And so, you know, if you dropped off a keystone, I would love to thank you and talk to you.
Okay.
You know, I think, you know, the other types of supports, let me back up. The other types of supports that we receive have been in people just wanting to come.
Okay.
Some people have said, you know, what are the hours? I really want to come. And so we've been doing our best to make sure that we're accommodating people so that they can come and be there. You know, for the first year, I said that, you know, I just want people to come into the space.
Right.
People say, oh no, I want to make a donation, I want to pay. Nope, right now, you know, this is technically owned privately by Kevin Jones.
Gotcha.
I'm allowing people to come in, you know, and you know, people have shown care for that space when they're in there.
Excellent.
You know, if they feel like, you know, someone's disrespecting by putting a water bottle down in a place that shouldn't go, you know, you see people kindly reminding people. So there's a type of care that I've seen people show for this space that, you know, has meant a lot to me because it relieves stress and tension for me. You know, people have made donations, you know, for some of our educational causes, and so we're grateful for that. You know, right now we're looking and we have a call out for more volunteers.
Okay.
Because there's more structural, operational things that we need to explore.
You
know, one of the great things I love about the space is that it's a beautiful space, but it's not big enough. It's not big enough to contain our history.
I got you. Well, you got over 5,000-6,000 pieces there that obviously that your home can't contain. And so you've got room to expand and grow. But let me come back to the notion of volunteers, because I think that's very critical for people to understand. There is an opportunity if you want to come in and volunteer and be educated on this whole process so that you can then share the rich history with other individuals. What does that take if somebody says, you know, I think that's something I might be interested in doing? What would that take?
So, you know, we're in that growth stage of an organization where we need volunteers that want to come in and be builders. And so I'm happy to receive volunteers. But I'm more happy to receive volunteers who come with a plan. They want to execute. And part of it's just that I don't have the capacity to do it all.
Gotcha.
And so I'm looking for people that want to help program that space. And whether that's set up an exhibit or they say, you know, I really want to help think through, you know, write up some of the history pieces around these around exhibits. You know, there are opportunities for some of our events. We know that we'll do events around Kwanzaa and Juneteenth. We'll more than likely do our hip hop cipher, our Christmas cipher. So, you know, stay tuned for that. But for some of those events, you know, we just need volunteers and we just need people kind of in the space, you know, and kind of show people around. But also to make sure people have a good time to how do you get to the bathroom? Sometimes we run out of toilet paper and everyone's like, where's Kevin? We need some toilet paper. And I'm like, oh, I know people use as much toilet paper. But
I got you.
But you know, so I think it's just getting in contact and reaching out. We have a board of directors that we're built. You know, we want to continue to expand that board of directors so that we're able to fully function on the operational side. You know, we don't have a lot of large donations, and so our books are really simple at this point. But we are in a growth trajectory, so we're looking for grant writers. You know, my background is nonprofit organizations, and so I write grants in my consultant side, but you know, when it comes to writing for the museum, you know, sometimes
I got you.
You know, I need some thought partners. That's often what I need. I need thought partners because I don't want this to be Kevin's museum.
Gotcha.
I want this to be a museum of Black experiences with that S at the end of experience. And so I want, you know, individuals, you know, regardless of race, gender, you know, I want folks to come in who want to be builders and who understand that this is an important history that we need and an important institution that we need in Saginaw. And what I mean by an important institution, maybe it's not a museum of Black experiences, but we want to make sure that there's a Black museum in the city of Saginaw or in the Great Lakes Bay region. I would love for it to be in the city of Saginaw, but you know, there's also room in the Great Lakes Bay region for you know, for this effort.
Now, you know, and I know you talked earlier, so let me make sure. So if somebody, however, because you're in a growth mode now, I know you said the initial year that you weren't really looking for donations, but are you accepting them now? And if so, where can people send them, and who should they address all of that to?
Yes, you know, so we are always accepting donations. We want to be clear to people that we're not accepting donations for. We're not accepting tax exempt donations for the building.
Gotcha.
So, you know, if you're looking to make a tax exempt donation, we can do that for our educational causes. And so, you know, that's, you know, around Kwanzaa time, it helps allow us to like build our educational materials, collateral, so that people can kind of ease through the exhibit. But if you want to make a donation that's not tax exempt, you can do that as well. You can reach out to me. You know, there's also the website www.amusbe.com, AMUSBE. It has my contact information. Right now, you cannot make a donation through the website.
Okay.
Just because there was some confusion for people, we want to make sure that's clear that we are not accepting donations for the building.
Excellent.
We're happy to return those if people want to make donations to the building. However, if you want to make donations to a new building, I do know of a church here in Saginaw for sale. That you know, and so we are looking at, you know, we believe that the nonprofit, we want the museum to operate independently of, you know, so the nonprofit, we are now looking for a building. We believe that we'll continue to use 1243 as a gallery space.
I got you.
Right now, temporary to house a museum, and so we encourage people to come by because that space will always be programmable for something around Black cultural arts.
I got you. Yeah. So here we are, and I think just a couple minutes left in our time today, and obviously we got to come back, you know, even a year from now, because by then you will have grown and expanded and all of the above. But talk to individuals in our Saginaw Bay Midland area that are reluctant to take this leap of faith, because for you, this really has to be a leap of faith. You delved into an area uncommon to Saginaw, but you have become successful. So what would be some advice? And then I got another question after that, but what would be some advice you would give a person that is thinking about it? I think I want to, but what would you say to that person?
Yeah, so, you know, I think for anyone who might be reluctant, you know, because before I started a museum, I had never started a museum before.
Okay.
I never started one before.
Right.
I realized that there have been people that have done it, and you know, there's something important, particularly in the time that we are in now, about collecting, about remembering, and about reflecting. And in a place like Saginaw that has lost a lot with the automobile industry,
Right.
And also just with the transition, people get older, but some of those stories have gotten lost. Sometimes in our city we might be more inclined to put up a parking lot versus preserve a building. Though we're working on that, and I say that as as an active member of the Historic Society Commission.
Okay.
But we want to make sure that we can tell these stories. We want Saginaw, East Saginaw once had Black people, a lot of Black people. We want people to know about those stories. We think about what's happening at Potter Street and the Potter Street Station.
There you go.
Before Potter Street Station, we have to remember that was a Black neighborhood. There were people there.
Okay.
We want to make sure our Black religious leaders, particularly, I think about Reverend James Worthy at Shiloh, and I open my grandmother's Bible, and I still have all the pictures from all the anniversaries. We want to make sure that there's a place where those stories can be held and told. And again, we're not to replace the Castle Museum.
Right.
We want to make sure that those stories have an opportunity to be told. If you are reluctant, I just ask that you reflect on when's the last time you've been able to go to an exhibit in a Black space that's being told and interpreted by Black people.
And can I interject this real quickly, because I want to make sure people understand. Don't be so quick to throw away grandma's stuff.
Please don't.
Because it might be historical. It could be something from her great grandmother. You just don't know. And I'm sure that Mr. Jones be more than willing to sit with you, schedule an appointment with you so that he can look at it and tell you. You might be throwing away treasures or something that's historical that can not only help him, but help our community as a whole, correct?
You are very correct. Oftentimes, and part of the reason my collection has grown, even from across the country, is because people have reached out to some of their local institutions, and they've been around for many years. They no longer need this stuff. And so I'm arguing that there are other smaller museums across the country that can use these items.
Excellent.
And so we want to have classes. That's the other part. We want to make sure there are educational opportunities. We want families to understand how to preserve your materials, how to maybe take a pencil and write the name on the back of this photo so that
good
in 30
information.
Years, that was great grandmama and not just Sally Sue.
Well, who is that? I don't know. One of our relatives. But I think that's very critical information for people to hear, because 20 years from now, if my memory has faded me, could I tell people that's my grandmother, that was my great grandmother, that was my uncle, that was so and so, and without having this type of information to educate us. And this is good information for anyone, regardless of your color, your background, whatever. I think that's critical. I got one more question to ask, because we're just about out of time. Ultimately, at the end of the day, what do you hope visitors will take away from the experience at the museum, especially after seeing some of your more challenging items? What do you hope people will take away from the museum?
The last thing I want people to walk away is a feeling of despair and hopelessness. My hope is that we have curated the exhibits in a way that you are able to reflect, but you leave with an actionable question of what am I going to do next?
There you go.
And we don't want that to be a paralyzing question. Because we have some opportunities and some options to help answer that, whether that's volunteer at the museum or get involved with a number of the community-based organizations that we partner with. There are other ways to kind of channel that feeling of despair. And so we want people to leave with thoughts about how I'm going to take this and do something different. And doing something different may look different for different people.
Right.
It may mean I'm telling my neighbor about this. It may mean as a kid, I'm inviting my mom to this. So we want people to walk away with thinking about an action that they'll do next to make sure that the things they see there that were demeaning, that were distasteful, that we're not repeating those things.
Gotcha.
And so that's it may seem small, but if we can try not to repeat some of these things or be more mindful when we think about culture, or we think about, for example, social media and how, the racist postcards back then are kind of like the social media of our day now. So how do we not share certain things? How do we have a different conversation about what we're seeing? So that's what I'm hoping.
Okay. Well, listen, we're out of time. So, we got to have part two. So let me just thank you, Mr. Kevin Jones, founder of a Museum of Black Experience, Alpha Media, KISS 107 for this platform. My great trusty engineer, Mr. Matthew Lester, New Life Baptist Ministry, Saginaw African American pastors. Let me thank you for this opportunity. Maya Angelou said this, and I think this is critical. The more you know of your history, the more liberated you are. So Saginaw, believe it or not, we have an opportunity to expand our world and knowledge of our world by learning more about Black history in particular. And this museum right here opens that door right in your own backyard. It will make us a better community. It will help us to have a greater appreciation for each other, and our city and our neighborhoods will be all the more better because of that. Again, Mr. Kevin Jones, again, founder of a Museum of Black Experience. Give the address again and the number so people can get that as we get ready to close out.
Yeah, so 1243 South Jefferson Ave again. I'm sorry, again. 1243 South Jefferson Avenue. So
Okay.
Again, that is 1243 South Jefferson Avenue. You can reach me on my cell phone at 202-770-6082 to make an appointment, as well as you can reach out on social media. Sometimes people just stop by.
There you go.
I've made room for you. So.
Excellent. Hey, God bless you. I'm praying for great success as you go and expand. Again, Saginaw, Bay City, Midlands, stay tuned. We've got some interesting conversations coming up again on finances, legal services, health, you name it. They're coming back our way. Got some phenomenal experts coming our way. God bless you during this holiday season. We'll see you shortly. Excellent. Good information.
Thank you so much.
You know,